So I'd like to briefly start by introducing Dr. Popal, our beloved speaker. And I've known him for a number of years. He's an honored instructor at UC Berkeley Extension in our TESOL certificate program. And he teaches in many different programs. He teaches our students about many different teaching methodologies as well as theories rooted in second language acquisition. And more importantly, Dr. Popal has personally helped countless, I'm talking about hundreds of teachers, become sort of transformative teachers because they're really focused on culturally responsive teaching and student-centered learning. So it's wonderful how he uses his passion and skills for education and how he uses that to transform classrooms and by extension the world. So I really hope you will join me in providing a very warm welcome for Dr. Popal this evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I wouldn't need that one. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Nancy for her very kind and very generous introduction. And it's a great honor and privilege for me to be here tonight and to share my expertise and experiences on this very topic, transformative learning for the lifelong learner and culturally sensitive teaching on instruction. I should mention that I originally come from Afghanistan. I'm a US citizen, and I feel very blessed and fortunate to live in this beautiful country and to be a citizen of this beautiful country. And also, among all other states, to live in this very multicultural, multilingual, golden states where most of the technological and instructional initiatives are basically initiated over here. So I feel very, very good about that. Also, every morning, as Nancy mentioned, that I teach in a number of different places. One of the places I teach is College of Alameda. There I teach English as a second foreign language. Actually, I teach it as a second language, not a foreign language. And in the College of Alameda, we have students from around the world. Last time I counted, we have students from 58 different countries studying together. In each class I teach, there are at least 16, 17 different linguistic groups. So every morning when I enter my ESL classes, and Yi Guan is one of the researchers who's doing a study for her dissertation, and she was there last week or this week, and there were 45 students, probably from 16, 17 different countries. And so every morning when I enter the classroom, I really feel blessed to have this opportunity to be in this multilingual, multicultural environment. And every morning when I look at these students, I always remember what Ofelia Garcia said in relation to multiculturalism, in relation to diversity in California, in the United States, actually. Ofelia Garcia, her work has been published in Colin Baker's book, the Principles and Foundations of Bilingualism and Bilingual Education. She used the garden metaphor for the United States and for multiculturalism. She said that the United States is like a huge, beautiful garden of flowers. Flowers of different colors, flowers of different shapes, flowers of different texture, flowers of different fragrances. And she believed that what? All these different types of flowers, these different types of colors and fragrances makes this country beautiful, this huge garden beautiful. She also believes that the teachers are like gardeners in our schools. Just like gardeners, the teachers should make sure that like a good gardener in this beautiful garden, should make sure that what? Every flower gets enough sunshine, enough water, enough nutrients, and enough attention. So if you want to read, she wrote this a lot more elegantly than I just said it. I paraphrase the words. Go to Foundations and Principles of Bilingualism in Colin Baker's book. She's written a lot about that one and this metaphor in particular. But in order to give you a glimpse of this multiculturalism, I'd like to share some statistics with you. Ethnic diversity in California. As of 2012, this is our ethnic mix here. We have 39.4% white, Hispanic 38.2%, and then followed by Asian, that includes all Asian countries, 13.9%, almost 14%, and then African Americans 6.6%, American Indians 1.4%, Pacific Islanders 0.5%, and then we have 2 or more races or mixed races 3.6%. This was California 2012 out of 38 million people. This is the makeup. And then, of course, the United States populations is there too. And then to look at the linguistic diversity, you see that English as a primary language spoken in California makes about 57.2% of people here speak English as a primary language, followed by other languages other than English. That is about what? 42.8%, only 43% of Californians speak a language other than English at home. And foreign-born are about 27.2%. I couldn't do the math to give you the number, but I said I would make mistakes, so I left it out. But this shows what? That's what exactly what Ofelia Garcia was saying. The beauty and the diversity and ethnicities and languages in our state of California. To give you a picture of different languages spoken, the 10 top languages spoken in California, English, 28% of people speak what? English as a primary language. And then followed by Chinese, and then followed by Spanish, and then Spanish was actually 28.46%, and then Chinese 2.8%, Tagalog, and it is followed by other languages, Vietnamese, Koreans, Armenian, Persian, Japanese, Russian, although it's top 10, but I found that there are other languages very close. I made it 12, okay, to be more inclusive. So there is Arabic, which is the same number with Hindi, of 0.38%, and then followed by French, which is very close. So this shows you that how diverse our state is. Actually, a couple of years ago, there was something in a newspaper about the court system in Los Angeles. I don't know about the court system here in San Francisco, that on a weekly basis, English was translated into 110 different languages. So that tells you how diverse our state is. And this is what Ofelia Garcia was referring to. And other than linguistic and ethnic diversity, there is this digital divide and also diversity here that we need to look at. And what does it mean to us as educators and instructors? And how we can deal with this diversity, not only ethnic, but also what? The digital device use. 88% of American adults have cell phones. You might think that everybody has it, only 88%, 12% of people don't have it. Okay, so 59% of Americans own a laptop. So the computer companies must think that what? 41% still need a laptop, so they could probably work on it to make it more attractive. 19% of Americans own an e-book. A long way to go there. And then 63% of Americans go online wirelessly. And then 78% of American adults use internet. Look at the next one. 95% of American teenagers use internet. So those of you that you're dealing with teenagers and the school system, this statistics tell you something, that you really need to utilize that one for education. So what does it mean to us? As I mentioned, so what do we do with this diversity? Does this make our job easier? Or is this going to make our job more challenging? The answer is what? It probably make our jobs more challenging because we have to use culturally sensitive methods to reach out to these, to answer this diversity, to reach out to these different types of students, and use some kind of a multi-sensory approach to instruct these students in our classrooms. So what I'm going to share with you will be a number of approaches, methods, practices that I will suggest. Some of you may find it very new. Others may find it a review. But I certainly hope that all of you will find it useful. These are the methods and techniques that I have used in my classes in the College of Alameda and other places. And they have proven to be extremely helpful and practical. And they could work with, although the emphasis that we have over here, I have been so far emphasizing was what? Linguistic minority students. But you will find out that what? It could work with anyone. Any school system, they're just basically sensitive methods of instruction. What you'll cover in this presentation, we will look for need for realia and mental stimulation. So I'm going to talk about that, takes a few minutes, and actually give you a couple of demonstrations. So you will actually experience learning another language, a language other than English. And then you could judge whether what? That particular approach is useful. Did you learn or did you not learn? You could judge that by yourself. You will talk about multiple intelligence after that. Scaffolding, what techniques can you use? There are a number of ways to scaffold, but I will just share a couple of those. So you'll look at that one. And then we are going to look at Bloom's taxonomy. Those of you that you're dealing with teaching reading or teaching listening, you may want to use or become familiar with Bloom's taxonomy. And then learning through participation, so making learning experiential. What can you do to make learning experiential? Some people wouldn't learn things unless they do it. It's the doing that will make the difference for them. And then we will look at the most important thing, knowing our students. What can we do to know who we instruct and how it could be? And then we'll go to the other part of this. And at the end, you'll have time to ask questions, and I will do my best. Please come in. And I will do my best to provide you with the answers. And if I cannot provide you with the answers, take my class. I will find the answers for you. Okay? So easy. The first thing that I want to talk about is need for realia and mental stimulation. Dr. Steve Krashen, who is an internationally known psycholinguist, and he is a professor of linguistics at USC. Please don't mention that on campus over here because their football team is always coming here and doing, not making us very happy. So he came up with a model of language teaching, second language teaching, that he refers to it as the natural approach. And I'm going to explain that to you, how this works to what? To help students comprehend English with very limited English language skills. And I will use another language to do that. So what he did was he came up with this model, which you call it the natural approach, means you learn language naturally, like the way children learn their first language. That's what he means by a natural approach. And then the main emphasis, the main premise of his model is the input. And input to Dr. Krashen means I+1. It means comprehensible. He says that learners can get your input, understand your input, only if it is what? I+1, at the I+1 level. And it doesn't need to be for linguistic input or language input. You can teach physics or biology or chemistry or history, but it has to be what? At I+1 level. So I means the current level of competence. That's what it means, where students are right now. And +1 means what? One level above it. So he recommends that what? If students are at this level, you teach one level above it. If you teach like 6 level above the level of students' competence, they're going to lose you. If you teach at the same level, they're not going to learn very much, or else the chances are that you're going to bore them. If you teach below their level, you're just basically wasting their time. So the most important thing is what? To find what the student's, where the student's eye is, or the student eye is, and then build on that. But of course, it's very difficult that you go to a class of 34 or, in my situation, 45 or 50 students to find what? Everybody's eye. You have to go for the middle ground. It's difficult. It's easy to say, but it's difficult to do. But it is possible to do things. So he says, once you provide that I+1 input, and then he gives you a lot of tips, and I'll share those with you. What are the things you can do to make it I+1? Okay? Once that's provided, then there is what he calls it, filter, which is a mental block. That if students have this mental block, whatever you provide, it's not going to go through that. Because whatever the instructor provides, it has to go through what? It has to get to the language acquisition device. And this is the wording that he took from Chomsky. Dr. Chomsky said that what? Every child, every person is born with a black box on the back, the left side of the head or the brain. And that black box, which he calls it LAD, or language acquisition device, that enables a person what? To pick up the linguistic input and then kind of learn the language. So he says, whatever input we give, it has to reach LAD. If it doesn't reach LAD, nothing will happen. But what can you do to reach LAD? There is this mental block. There is this filter. If you don't like the mental block and filter, anxiety level. If students are anxious, they're uncomfortable physically or emotionally, whatever you do, it's not going to get through them. So what are the things you can do to lower this input? That's the most important thing. So you need to, that's why it says what? We need to teach in a culturally sensitive ways to reach out to a lot of people. One thing you can do is what? Is validate. Validate students' experiences. Validate students' cultures. Validate students and respect what they bring in the class. Once they see that they are validated, their language is validated, their experience is validated, their culture is validated, they are respected, they will feel comfortable. That's the first principle. And then, of course, there will be a number of other things other than validation that could what? Help the person to get the input to the LAD. And when it gets to the LAD, the person will somehow, according to Dr. Krashen, he will acquire language. He will pick it up subconsciously, like the way children do. That's what he means by acquisition. So there is a difference between, if you look at a dictionary, acquisition and learning, they are synonymous terms, but not in Dr. Krashen's book. He makes a distinction that acquisition is like you pick up something, or in this case language, subconsciously, effortlessly, like the way children pick up their first language. They don't come to UC Berkeley to learn English, they just pick it up. But learning is what? Formal learning, that you go to a class, you take notes, you suffer, you do homework, you fill in the blanks, you conjugate verb. All of that's what? That's the learning part. So he says his model promotes what? Acquisition, learning language effortlessly, and like the way the child learns the language. But the most important thing, the main premise of his model is input. He makes a distinction between two types of inputs. One, he calls it finely tuned input. And the other one, he calls it roughly tuned input. Finely tuned input is an input that, the instructor is using charts, graphs, pictures, realia, which means real objects, and does everything possible to kind of what? Concretize all these abstract notions. So if you do that, you're providing what? Finely tuned input. I'll give you examples of it in a few minutes. And roughly tuned input is something like this, that you hear things. You may, if somebody talks, you may understand a word here and a word there, but you really, what you're hearing is what? Noise. Like if you're learning another language, I'm sure a lot of students I know here, they speak several other languages in addition to English. So at the initial stages of the second or foreign language acquisition, it's extremely difficult to what? To talk to somebody on the phone. because you don't see the person, you don't see the body language, you don't see the gestures. It's extremely hard to do it. So lecturing in a classroom without using visual aids is an example of what? Roughly tuned input. Let me give you an example of roughly tuned input. I will give you two examples. One roughly tuned input and one finely tuned input. And I will use another language, not English. See, and which one you can understand. And I will be surprised if you understand what? The roughly tuned. But of course, I will test you extensively, yeah, if you understand that one. So I'm going to speak in another language, so please don't leave the classroom. با بسیار خوشوقت هستم از اینکه بر ما این چانس میسر شده که ما امروز شما از نزدیک صحبت بکنم و از اینکه شما به این وقت ساعت 6:30 شام که وقت اصلا نان شب است شما از خانه‌های خود اطلاع دادین آمدین به صنف به خاطر از اینکه راجع به موضوعات زبان شناسی یاد بگیرین. ما به حد خوش هستم و امیدوار هستم معلوماتی رو که امروز بر شما میتونم این معلومات ما به شما بسیار مفید واقع شود و شما بتونید که در صنف‌های خود وقتی که شما شاگردای خود درس میتین از این معلوماتی که شما در اینجا میآموزین از این به قدر کافی استفاده کنین و بتونین که در درس‌های روزمره از این کار بگیرید. شما گپ من فهمیدید؟ This was an example of what? I plus 6,000. Okay? That those of anybody speaks Dari in this class? The language I spoke was Dari, one of the languages spoken in Afghanistan, one of my first languages. So Dr. Krashen says, and believe me, this probably what you heard was what? Noise in another language. And there are students in our K-12 system, in our adult education systems, in our colleges, that they come to class and they listen to this kind of input for 6 hours. They have no clue of what the teacher is saying. What they hear is what? Like what you heard, noise, not language. It doesn't sound like language. But that's, how can you take this noise that you heard and give it what? Shape, color, and make it comprehensible. That's what you need, what? Sensitive methods. That's what Dr. Krashen says. This, I use the word chance, which comes from the word chance. If you listen to it very carefully, probably you could have said there's a cognate there that you could, oh, I know what chance means. Come on in, please. Please. But other than that, you may know a word here and there, and then you're lost. And I'm afraid that if I had continued for the next 15 minutes in that language, I would not have as many people as I have right now. So Dr. Krashen says that this kind of input doesn't really help. In a classroom, this kind of input doesn't have a place. You really need to go out of your way and make your input what? Comprehensible. I plus 1. And what? And make it finely tuned. Finely tuned, as I mentioned, is what? You use pictures. You use charts. You use graphs. You use body language. You use facial expression. And by using all of this, you could make what? Your input comprehensible. I'm going to use the same language and demonstrate this one. And you'll see whether you can understand something or not. Okay? I know the name of some of the participants over here, some of the audience, but not the others. So I'll probably make myself familiar with at least some of you that I don't know, so I'll have you participate in this. So I'm going to demonstrate the finely tuned input. نام ما صدیق است. نام ما صدیق است. نام ای دین است. دین. نام ای دین است. دین. نام او لینا است. لینا. نام او نانسی است. نام ما صدیق است. نام او نانسی است. نام ای دین است. نام او لینا است. نام او گارت است. گارت. Okay. نام شما چیست؟ نام من صدیق است. نام ای دین است. نام شما چیست؟ نام شما یوحنا است. بسیار خوب. نام شما چیست؟ مشال است. بسیار خوب. نام ای چیست؟ مشال است. بسیار خوب. نام شما چیست؟ مهدی است. بسیار خوب. بسیار خوب. نام شما انیس. بسیار. نام شما کارلاس. نام شما بی. نام شما جیک. نام شما چیست؟ هایمیز. نام شما چیست؟ بتسی. نام شما چیست؟ می. نام شما چیست؟ الو. بسیار خوب. نام ما صدیق است. نام ای دین است. نام ای مشال است. نام او بتسی است. نام ما صدیق است. ما مرد هستم. ما مرد هستم. نام ای دین است. دین مرد است. نام او گارت است. گارت مرد است. نام ای نانسی است. نانسی خانم است. نام او بتسی است. بتسی خانم است. نام ای لینا است. لینا خانم است. نام ای مریا است. مریا خانم است. ایگوان میشال خانم است یا مرد است؟ خانم است. بسیار خوب. نانسی بتسی خانم است یا مرد است؟ خانم است. بسیار خوب. گارد خانم است یا مرد است؟ نانسی خانم است. بتسی خانم است. او خانم است یا مرد است؟ مرد است. بسیار خوب. مرد است. مرد است. بسیار خوب. نانسی خانم است یا مرد است؟ خانم است. بسیار خوب. خانم است. نام ما صدیق است. ما مرد هستم. نام ای دین است. ای مرد است. نام ای لینا است. لینا خانم است. نام ما صدیق است. ما مرد هستم. ما معلم هستم. معلم هستم. نام ای دین است. دین شاگرد است. نام ای مشال است. مشال شاگرد است. نام او مری است. مریا شاگرد است. نام ای انیس. انی شاگرد است. شما شاگرد هستید. ما معلم هستم. نانسی شما شاگرد هستید یا معلم هستید؟ ما معلم هستم. بتسی شاگرد است. دین شاگرد است. مشال شاگرد است. شما شاگرد هستید یا معلم هستید؟ شاگرد هستم. بسیار خوب. شاگرد هستم. شما شاگرد هستید یا معلم هستید؟ شاگرد هستم. بسیار خوب. شما شاگرد هستید یا معلم هستید؟ شاگرد هستم. گارد شما شاگرد هستید یا معلم هستید؟ شاگرد هستم. شما شاگرد هستید یا معلم هستید؟ شاگرد هستم. شاگرد هستم. I don't want to continue with this. It will take too long. Some of you are saying, my God, we came here to listen to a lecture, not to learn a language. But this is what. Now let's, the door is open, so I have to be careful. So this is an example of what? What you can do to make your input comprehensible. And I want to ask you, what did I do differently? And when I presented this input, the finely tuned input, what did I do differently?
Will you use smaller chunks of information?
Exactly. That's one very important principle. That you need to what? Chunk the information. Don't give too much, because there is another linguist who is a rival to Dr. Krashen. He says that his name is Barry McLaughlin, he believes that human beings are limited capacity processors. Means we can take so much information at one time and process it. If you overwhelm the system, if you overwhelm the learner, they're not going to learn that. So you need to be very careful as a teacher. This is culturally sensitive teaching. That what? We need to be, there are different needs. And people, not all, some students may be able to take a lot and process it. But most people will have what? Difficulty with that. And then it doesn't matter whether you teach what? Math or English or history. We need to consider this principle. As you said, we need to chunk information. A little chunk at a time. Then once that's kind of internalized, then we go what? To the next chunk and practice that one. So one difference between what? Finely tuned and roughly tuned was what? Chunking. What else did I do differently in presenting the finely tuned? Please?
Repeat the same sentence again and again.
Exactly. Don't tell me repetition doesn't work, okay? In language acquisition, there are two principles, and there are two different opposing theories. One is called behaviorism by B.F. Skinner, and he believes that what? People learn, or kids learn, their infants learn their language, their first language by repetition, imitation, and memorization. And he got a lot of criticism over that. And then, but when in real life, when you learn something, a language, you really want to hear it one more time. Is that right? So repetition does help. Even though this Dr. Skinner's theory is not marketable these days, but there are some part of it that what? We could still use when you teach, no matter what, whether you teach language or any other things, find a way to kind of what? Repeat that. If repeating is not the right word, we came up with other fancy words. We call it recap. It's the same thing, okay? You repeat the same thing, okay? Recapping. For a lecture, like in a class like this, recapping means what? You paraphrase, say the same thing in different words. Students do benefit, whether you teach language or whether you teach, so we try to find ways, because the word repetition, memorizations are what? Not good words these days. They're very pejorative, they're negative. So instead of memorize, we don't say memorize anymore, we say what? Internalize information. It sounds very good. We internalize. You basically do the same thing. Anyhow, it's just like you don't buy a used car anymore. You buy a pre-owned car, okay? So it's the same notion that we need to work what? When we teach language, yes, one principle was what? Chunk the information, a little bit at a time. Secondly, do what? Repetition. Or recapping, okay? Something that what? Will help the learner hear the same thing one more time. And you will talk about learning styles and multiple intelligences in a few minutes. And there are people that we call them auditory learners. Auditory learners do benefit and do expect things to be repeated. They never get tired of repetition. But there are people that they don't like repetition. They want to, if even the same thing is repeated, they want it in different words. But so there is a learning style, a group of people that are auditory learners, they do benefit from, they expect the teacher to repeat things. What else was different? So repetition helped, chunking helped. What else did I do differently the second time?
Engagement with individuals.
Engagement, if you just give a lecture, people forget it. But when you say that what, you think that what, students are engaged and they expect that what, they will be called upon, okay? So they kind of prepare. Yeah, you keep them on their toes and say, my God, he's going to call on me. This is Khanum or Marada or what? And then you kind of what, think about that one. And this helps to what? So keeping students what? On their toes and alert is another technique that these are all Dr. Krashen's ideas of how you can help input become more what? Comprehensible and provide finely tuned input rather than roughly tuned input, no matter what you teach. Okay? What else did I do differently? So the three things that you named, chunking, repetition, and keeping the students on their toes. Interaction, right. So interacting with students. Right. Exactly. At the beginning stages of acquisition, It's always good to start from here and now. Then go make it abstract. You go from concrete to abstract, not from abstract to concrete. It doesn't work that way. So when you teach language, or anything for that matter, you need to keep this principle in mind. You start from here and now, and then you go what? To abstract notions. So that's why it works. And especially with language, you want to know people, their names, and so that's another principle. Anything else somebody wants to add to what we did differently?
You use body language where you showed us I am.
Exactly. So this for teachers, if you're a shy person, teaching is not the right thing to do. Okay? You really need to go out of your way and what? Use body language, facial expression, eye contact, be mobile. And that's another important principle. That's why we have to use charts, graphs, visuals, body language, facial expression, eye contact, everything. That's what? To kind of express ourselves and also convey meaning and make it what? Comprehensible input. Anything else that you could add to this list of things that you can make input comprehensible? Context. So it was about the context of what? Introduction. That it's the first day you meet people, you want to know the person's name, the person's profession, and all of that. And probably all of you got this, that when I say my name is Naam Mas Siddiqas, what does it mean? My name is Siddiq. Okay. Ma Mardasno. I'm a man. Okay. Ma Mu'allimasno. I'm a teacher. Right. When I say that Nami U Bitsis, what does that mean? Her name is Bitsy. Bitsy Khanumas. A woman. Bitsy Shagirdas. She's a student. Now, did you use the dictionary to get do you have a Dari English dictionary right now? Okay. Did you use a translator? Did you Google it? No. Then how did you get it? Is the question. You got it because of what? All of these things we said. Because of contextualization, because of talking about here and now, because of what? Because of repetition, because of chunking, because of interaction, because of keeping your students on their toes. So that's why, don't believe somebody says that, oh, what should I do in the first day of class? I don't speak one word of Spanish and my students don't speak one word of English. I have to translate into, what do I do? Read Krashen. It teaches you how to make input comprehensible. And he has a lot of tips on that one that I just shared too with you. So that's what he means, provide input. What kind of input? Comprehensible input. Let me see, okay. And that comprehensible input means what? I+1. In your case of Dari, your I was 0. Because you didn't speak anything, okay? The first time I give you this speech, so it was 0 plus 6,000 doesn't work, okay? So, but when I offered what? The finely tuned input, I used my name to just build that what? To make the 0 level 1, and then build on it to learn the gender and the occupation. So you can do all of this. He says, this kind of teaching, there is a good chance that what? That you could get the input what? To the language acquisition device, LAD, and that will translate to what? To acquired competence, means you pick up the language. Of course, by this kind of teaching, you cannot prepare students to pass SAT. You can only prepare them for what? For this interpersonal interaction. So if you want them to pass SAT, this is a good start. But don't dwell there. You have to do other methods. So there's so many other things to do in order to take them or prepare them for SAT. So Dr. Krashen says, in order to make your input comprehensible, you could make it 3 ways. One, use what? Pictures and realia. Pictures, realia means what? Real objects. Okay. Secondly, using the characteristics of people and objects around you. That's exactly what I did. I used your characteristics. I used my characteristics. Male, female, names, occupations. That's what? Using characteristics of object and people around you. That's another way to make input comprehensible. The third one, which is a very, very popular method, and some of the members of the audience, I know they know it, and some of them probably do not, or they forgot it. It's called TPR. TPR stands for Total Physical Response. And we are very lucky in this state that we have all these leaders of education also. We do not only have the leaders in technology, but the leaders in education also in this state. TPR was originated, the shape it is right now, by San Jose State University professor James Asher. And he popularized it around the world. He basically has gone to almost every country which is on the map and has taught this one. And now that he cannot travel himself, I take his message to Korea twice a year. And what? Use TPR, Total Physical Response. He believes that what? Total physical, he's a cognitive psychologist, Dr. Asher, James Asher. He believes that children learn their first language through commands. So when you teach adult learners, you should not deprive them from this mode of learning, okay? Like if you look at the commands that you give to a child at the beginning stage of language acquisition for the first year or 14 months that they cannot talk, you tell them things to do, they cannot talk back to you, thank God. They do it, is that right? Give me some commands that we give to kids to perform and they do it. Can somebody give me some commands? I've been around young kids, please. Be quiet. Okay, be quiet. The chances are 80% or 70%, yeah, that they will be quiet. Okay, what else?
Stand up.
Stand up, okay. They stand up, okay. Eat, thank you, eat. Okay, what else?
Go to sleep.
Go to sleep, okay. Not now, okay. Okay, what else? Wash your teeth. They don't have teeth yet. Okay, we need to work on that. Once they get teeth, they talk. Okay, but okay, wash your hands or something. They get expensive too, right? What else is the kind of commands you give to very young infants?
Don't cry.
Say thank you. So we teach them the social linguistic rules very early in life. But before they can say things, they what? You ask them to do something, and they do it without being able to talk. So Dr. Asher believes that what? You can use the same technique for teaching language at the beginning stages. While Dr. Krashen's first theory, using characteristics and input, could apply to other disciplines as well, the TPR is mostly for what? Language, and you could use it at advanced stages in other disciplines as well. So he believes that what? We should not deprive adult learners from this mode of learning. So you could learn a lot, and because you will find out that probably some of you didn't feel comfortable to say khanum, because you don't have the sound in English. You thought that if you do this over and over, you may get a sore throat and leave this auditorium with a sore throat there. So because of that, you didn't feel comfortable to say it. So he believes that what? At the beginning stages, we should not make the learners to produce. Give them time. He says, honor silent period. We should honor silent period. I mean, we should give students time to be silent, but still learn the language. So children, when they learn their first language, for the whole year, they're quiet. It doesn't mean that they are not learning. They are learning internally, but they are not verbalizing it. So he recommends, Dr. Krashen recommends that what? We need to use the same technique in teaching second language, using what? TPR. I'm going to use a short version of TPR here to help you see how you learn some Dari words, which was what? Nam, right? Khanum, right? Mard, Mualim, Shagird. You actually learn 5 words in 15 minutes. That's very good, actually, yeah. So you're going to learn other words by using TPR. Now let me ask, I know that some of you here took classes, those of you that you did not take classes here, do you know what TPR is? Anyone of you have any idea of TPR? No? Then I will show you how it works, but I will try to do a short version because the long version takes a long time. So to do the short version of TPR, I'll have to bring a couple of people here. And remember, when you come here, oh, I should bring them here because you want to see them. Okay. I need to ask for 2 volunteers. I need 2 volunteers to go there, and then I will demonstrate with them. Please, somebody from this side wants to come? Dean? Betsy and Dean, brave students.
Where shall we sit?
Please, over there, yeah.
You have.
So what we're going to do, I'm going to teach you another language. Now that you mastered Dari, you're going to master Pashto. Okay? Yeah. First, I'm sorry that my back is turned towards you guys. So culturally, I don't feel comfortable, but this is the setup. I can't help it. First, you do what I say and do. And then later on, you do only what I say. Okay? You don't say anything. That's the good thing. Okay? So what I'll say. What I'll say. Kshene. What I'll say. Kshene. What I'll say. Chatta ishara okay. Izmikita ishara okay. Takhtata ishara okay. Darwazata ishara okay. Darwazata. Darwaza. Darwaza. Kshene. Chatta ishara okay. Izmikita ishara okay. Takhtata ishara okay. Darwazata ishara okay. What I'll say. Kshene. Chatta ishara okay. Takhtata ishara okay. Darwazata ishara okay. What I'll say? Kshene. Good job. Thank you. Thank you. Please, thank you. Now, the other part of this is that when you do this, they didn't use a word of what I just, they just what? Understood what I said. Okay? So the other part of this, I don't think I will do that because I don't want to inconvenience everybody. These chairs are not very convenient for sitting up and standing up. So what you do is, first, you ask for volunteers to come and do it. And then everybody does it. You do it with the whole class. Okay? And then students give commands to each other. And you choose, just like the one that we did for using characteristics of people and object around you, you teach 3 to 5 commands at a time. Again, that principle of what? Chunking information also applies here. You don't want to overwhelm the learner with like 15 commands. And somehow you had never heard of Pashto, Bitsy, and Dean, but you did something. You understood. You followed my commands. So he believes that what? By using this type of a method, because you honor silent period, they don't have to produce it, they feel more comfortable. The most important thing is what? According to Dr. Krashen, is what? Lowering affective filter. You need to really make sure that what? They feel comfortable. And when they are comfortable, they could probably what? Learn more language. So this is the all steps of TPR that you set up. for the demonstration, which I pulled these chairs and put them over there. Chair for myself, 2 chairs for the volunteers, asking for 2 volunteers to come. I found 2 brave people. And then demonstration, initial, that's what I did. I did step number 1 and step number 2. Initial demonstration, 1 to 2 minutes, probably took us 2 minutes or a little bit longer. And then group action, which I did not do because it takes time. It means what? I do the same commands with everybody. But I didn't want to inconvenience you. Then you provide a written copy of what the students heard. And this is actually the first 3, step 1, 2, 3. This is most of TPR is done this way for the first 6 weeks of instruction. You don't ask them to produce a word. They just show comprehension. After 6 weeks, you could go back and what? Provide written copy of what they heard. They see it. So at the beginning, it's all oral. Sorry, not oral, all oral, not oral. And then they see, they hear it, and then they see the copy, and then they make it oral repetition. Everybody repeats, and then students tell the teacher to perform some of these commands, and then students practice with one another. So this step number 4 is a very unique, step that no other method has it. And that is what? The student tell the teacher what to do. So the student tell the teacher, stand up. He stands up. Walk to the chalkboard. You walk to the chalkboard. Pick up the eraser. You pick up the eraser. Erase the chalkboard. You erase the chalkboard. The students tell the teacher. That, according to Dr. Asher, kind of changes this dynamic and reverses the role of learning and teaching. So the teacher becomes kind of what? Like a learner here. It just becomes part of the game. It kind of removes the barriers. So he's a cognitive psychologist. He knows something about psychology of learners, and he came up with this, that if you do this, especially this principle, this step number 6, it really removes these barriers, and it helps the learner to kind of connect with the teacher, and teacher becomes part of this game, and they feel more comfortable. The language that you provide for them, this will be the language you heard. Wulalse, Kishene, Chatta Isharawoke, Takhta Isharawoke, Darwaza Isharawoke. So these were the commands that you heard. So this is what you said, but of course, because students are not ready yet to what? To do the written form of the language, you need to provide this information, what? All this writing in English so that they can read it. There's some kind of a phonetic system, but you don't have to impose a phonetic system on them. Just write it in English alphabet so they can read it easily. If you do both, let's say you teach Korean to American students and you teach them the written form and also the language, are 2 new things. It's very hard to process that one. So one thing at a time. So first teach them what? The language. Once they develop some oral proficiency, then go to what? Writing and reading. Otherwise, imposing both of them at one time will be kind of difficult for some students, if not for all. Other thing Dr. Krashen recommends as part of this using realia and mental stimulation is that he divides this language acquisition process into 4 stages. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. And for each stage, he has some recommendations. Like for stage 1 is like what we did in TPR. Students do not understand a word. They have no background. All you need to do is what? They can listen. So you give them what? Non-verbal responses. And some students, they're silent. And the silence could be from 10 hours to 6 months. So you have to be extremely patient teacher. That if the students cannot talk for first 6 months, still smile. Don't say a thing. Don't expect them to do what? To produce something. Because he believes that what? It's the oral production that will make the learner uncomfortable and anxious and gives them anxiety. And when the learner is anxious, uncomfortable, has anxiety, he's not going to learn. Okay? You have to make them what? Comfortable. One way to make them comfortable is what? Don't expect them to talk. As long as they show comprehension by body language, physical response, you should celebrate. Okay? And so these are the kind of things that we did in this class, like point to the ceiling, point to the chalkboard. So this point to, basically by using this method, you can teach them a lot of things in a classroom, like all the objects in the classroom can be what? Pointed to. All other actions, like you erase the chalkboard. In classroom there are, for example, a sink to wash hands. So you can teach them all these verbs. You bring fruits, you bring vegetables. You can show them to, for example, peel apple, for example. They learn the word peel. Wash your hands, rinse your hands, dry your hands. You can just see how many verbs you can teach them by just using TPR. So mostly all clothing articles, vegetables, fruit, classroom objects, everything which is what? Visual. You can teach it by using TPR for the first, depending on how long it takes them, but at the beginning stages of language acquisition. But the expectation is what? That they don't produce. And if they don't, you still smile. Okay? Yeah, that's the thing. So you have to be, that's what. So it's 90% teacher talk. Because you are the talker. They can produce. So you talk, you tell them what to do, like what I have been doing. I did all the talking, they did all the movement. The second stage gets a little bit better. So there is a continuation of listening, but still they cannot produce long sentences. So you go with what? With yes/no questions, like is she a doctor? Either or question. For example, is this a pen or a pencil? So you point to something, and then they say it's a pencil. They give a one-word answer. So you don't expect them to come up with complete sentences. Or, what did you eat last night? They name one thing, pizza. Okay, that's one word. Okay, and so where question? Where did you go? To UC Berkeley. Okay, or they list things. What do you see on the floor? They name things. So they don't have to come up with complete sentences. That's the whole thing. So you give them time, and that's why they expect teachers to be what? Very, very patient. And the stage 3, he believes that here the speech emerges. So you could kind of raise the bar and give them what? More situations to talk and more chances. Here, it's 40% teacher talk, 60% student talk. See, from 90%, we got to 40% teacher talk. And you can see that at this stage, you ask them why question, how question, what do you think question, describe question. This means what? You ask one question, you expect them to come up with several sentences. Okay? Like, how do you make green tea, for example? Then they have to come up with sentences that you boil water first, and then you put the tea back there, and then wait. So at least they have to come up with several sentences. Why do you want to learn English? Because, and they come up with a number of reasons why they learn English. Why do you want to become a business person? Why did you choose business as your major? Then they have to come up with a couple of sentences. So for these questions, you have to wait until they are ready. So that's what Dr. Krashen is suggesting, that you need to find the student's I, current level of competence. And you teach them based on what their I is. So if they are not ready for why and how question, if you ask them those kind of questions, then it's way above their level of competence. They're not going to perform, and it's not going to be what? A successful teaching, learning situation. In stage 4, they give speeches, and Dr. Krashen makes a distinction between BICS. I think BICS was mentioned over here, this one. This BICS simply means social language. Language that you need for social interaction. That stands for basic interpersonal communication skills. Social interaction. Social interaction, is easier. But then you go to what? The CULP, which is academic language. They need to what? Learn academic vocabulary. They need to be able to compare things. They need to synthesize things. They need to summarize things. They need to say things in different words. All of these are what? So he believes that if you follow his method, students could reach this level of competence to be able to what? From being totally silent to being completely dominant in the classroom. Here, it's only 10% teacher talk, 90% what? Student talk. And that simply means what? The teacher is basically facilitating communication in the classroom. He's basically silent. He just creates situations where students can express themselves, write, read, talk, and do all of that. But he says that that's how this thing can happen. Of course, everything that you say or anyone says, it could be criticized. So this model has been also criticized. But if you use this model, if you expect people to become conversationally competent, to talk about themselves, to talk about here and now, it does work. But to prepare them for take SAT and pass it and come to UC Berkeley, you probably need more than one crush, and you also need prayers and a lot of help. But it does help. So it's a good start, not a good end probably. So those of you that you're involved in language teaching, come on, please. Teaching and learning, this is one method that can get you started. One thing I should mention is that all of these efforts are made to avoid one thing. And that one thing is what? Translation. That you don't translate in the class. And so if you really want students to learn, to become competent in that language, to speak that language, understand that foreign language, you do not translate. See, Dr. Krashen knows a lot about it. He learned several languages himself. He learned English is, of course, his first language. He learned French. He learned Hebrew. He learned German. He learned Yiddish. 5 languages. And he speaks from experience that translation does not help. Because translation makes it easy for you. Remember, easy come, easy go. The people don't put their best effort. So the best thing is what? To make students responsible for learning. Yes, it's not easy. Yes, they may feel frustrated. Yes, they may feel tired. But that's what learning is. It does entail those kind of things. Another principle that deals with transformative learning for the lifelong learner, and especially culturally sensitive instruction, is that regardless of what subject matter you teach and where you teach, whether you teach at UC Berkeley, main campus or extension or USF or here in China or you teach in China or you teach here or you teach in Korea, you really need to make sure that what? You use multiple intelligences in your classes. And that means that you try to activate every learning modality possible. You find an excuse when you write your lesson plan. You really need to ask yourself, what do I have for special intelligence? Or for somebody who is what we call it a visual learner. What do I have for a visual learner? If you use Dr. Krashen's method, you have a lot for a visual learner. You have body language, you have pictures, you have realia. That takes care of what? The spatial intelligence, the visual learner. So you must find something that students could do what? Can see. Even if you teach something very, very abstract, try to make it visualize it. At least show them on the board. PowerPoint, I think, is the best friend for what? For teachers. It really makes life a lot easier. So if they just see the text of what you're saying, that you have met what? The requirement of spatial intelligence. And then what? The musical intelligence. There are people that what? They feel comfortable with music. It also deals with what? People that they want to hear things. That they are what? That they are auditory learners. And there are a lot of auditory learners. And auditory learners benefit from what? Hearing things. So, and they also benefit from what? Repetition. They want to hear it. I mean, those of you who like music, you like a song. How many times do you listen to your favorite song? I have found one ghazal for the last 3 months. It takes me from Concord to Alameda every morning and brings me back from UC Berkeley to Concord again. I never get enough of it. It's a ghazal song. It's one of these Indian-style ghazal. I want to polish on my Urdu, one of the languages that I used to speak very fluently, and I'm losing it a little bit. So ghazal helps me what? you never get it's just the same thing. Those people that are what? Auditory learners, they want to benefit. So in your classes, whether you give lectures, whether you give the ESL advanced classes, provide them with what? With tapes. Most books these days come with what? With a CD. That takes care, because the reason that they're doing that is what? They want to take care of these auditory learners, because they could, whatever they hear in the class is one thing, but they can go home and listen to this dialogue like 15 times. There's nothing wrong with that. They want to hear it. Like some of you said, what did you say? Khanomas. Again, khanomas. You wanted to hear it one more time. When you hear something, the same thing there. So that's important in teaching. Another intelligence is what? Bodily kinesthetic intelligence. It's the movement. They need to move. They move to touch things, touching things. You bring an object, you pass it. Let every student touch it, make a physical connection with that. That will really, really what? That physical connection with the object you bring, it almost guarantees learning the name of that object, the pronunciation of that object. It's just that physical, personal touch that you do. So having students to move around, not sitting like this. These chairs are planted. Dr. Krashen will not be very happy. Actually, this theory is Dr. Howard Gardner from Harvard University came up with this multiple intelligence in 1980. And he will not be very happy to see these chairs that do not move. This is not, well, that move only when you want to wake up. But to do what? To do group work, to move the chairs, to move around. Like we cannot have face-to-face interaction. This is not good for that thing. So bodily kinesthetic means what? That you make this physical movement. Find a reason. And especially all of us, classrooms, regardless of what level we teach, we're dealing with TV generations. And in TV generations, what we have is what? Every 15, 20 minutes, what? This commercial. The people expect to what? To have some kind of a break of a different activity. So if you talk like what I'm doing right now over an hour and without a break, then the chances are that what? I did give you a break when I was doing the total physical response. That's the bodily physical. Okay. So the chances are that you could lose what? The students. So you really need to what? Provide this bodily kinesthetic, activate that one. And then interpersonal intelligence in learning styles is called field-dependent learners. These are these are learners that they benefit from what? Interacting with others, talking to each other, conversing with each other. Group work, cooperative group work is the best thing for this one. So there are people that they will not learn unless they what? They talk to somebody, because this cooperative group work provides some kind of what? Support structure. You find that there is support for you. It's just like in a few minutes I'll talk about scaffolding. And the scaffolding is basically what? A support system. You support students when he's kind of what? Vulnerable. It does not feel comfortable. You see that there are two other people with me in the same boat, and this boat is not sinking. So they are going to help me stay. So this is doing just that. We have different names for this, interpersonal intelligence. So group work, while there are other people that they hate group work. You tell them group work, their blood pressure goes up. Because I have to work with people again. There's nothing wrong with that. So but the thing is, in the classroom, we don't know who likes what, or what kind of intelligence is their preferred learning modality. So we have to use what? A multi-sensory approach. So that's what I said, that this is what Ophelia Garcia said about this diversity in the United States, and then the diversity that I shared with you, linguistic and ethnic diversity in the state of California. This doesn't make our job easier, because that diversity also means what? We have to use a multi-sensory approach, because we have to reach out to people with different backgrounds. So that is that. And then intrapersonal are these people that they want to work alone. They just don't want to be part of a group. And there is nothing wrong with that either. Okay? If they want to buy a house, they want to buy the house at the very end. At least they're on one side, they don't have a neighbor. Okay? They don't like to be surrounded by people. Just go to some computer labs. Somebody wants to work in a computer, they come and they find a computer that there's nobody around it. Garth is sitting back there. It's an example of what? Field sensitive learner, nobody around him. So he's a field independent, intrapersonal learner. He doesn't want to be what? Sorry, Garth, I just give an example. I needed that example. Yeah, okay. So he's sitting all by, and so is Nancy, I believe. So people that they work for UC Berkeley Extension, they want to be left alone. Okay, that's what it means. They want to be left alone.
He's above it all.
Yeah.
He's above it all.
Yeah.
But she's on the same level as all.
Yeah, exactly. But still, it's UC Berkeley Extension. It's what? Field independent and intrapersonal intelligence. They want to think by themselves. They don't want to be bothered. Okay. The linguistic intelligence is, of course, that there are some people that they're good with language. They can create language. They can write short stories. They can express themselves. They can think, use their imagination, write poems, all of that. That's what? That's linguistic intelligence. So in our classes, again, we have to have activities that kind of what is inclusive of that. That's why we have to ask people to write journals, for example, because that's the expression in writing. That has to do with linguistics. We have to expose them to what? Fiction in the classroom. Ask them to read something which is a fiction or non-fiction. So to have a lot of reading that deals with what? With those types of expressions, either perceptually or productively. That either they read it, they connect to it, or they expect them to produce it. So that's what you need to do with linguistic intelligence. And of course, with analytical intelligence, as these are the people that they have this mathematical intelligence, that they are able to take a whole, break it into parts, and then put it back together. So we need to think of what? Ways of activating that intelligence in our classrooms. And then naturalistic are those that what? That they want to be close to nature, and then there are a number of other intelligences that has been listed on. If you go to our Gardener, just type multiple intelligences, they have listed 2-3 other ones: spiritual intelligence, existential intelligence, but that's not classroom. We don't want to do class and have a prayer session, which is the spiritual intelligence. You have to deal with religion and things. So these 3 or 4 or 7 that we are 8, these are the kind of things that we can do what? With in a classroom, like naturalistic intelligence, like let's say you teach science. You bring, for example, you ask the students to plant seeds and water the seeds and take care of them. The little seed becomes a plant, and the plant gives flowers, and flowers gives fruit. So when you do these things like that, you always find these kind of things in kindergarten. You're doing what? You're activating naturalistic intelligence as well. Raise, fish, for example, and then release them to the water, the ocean. If you do things like this, you're dealing with what? Naturalistic intelligence. And there are people that they love to do that. Kids especially. They just love to do that. And so that's what Ophelia Garcia said, that this beautiful garden requires a lot of work from the gardener, the teacher. So we really need to what? Be good gardeners, making sure that what? Every flower, to maintain the beauty of this garden, it's not easy. So we have to pay attention to these, because these flowers what? Require this type of attention from us. So in every lesson plan, you really need to what? To make sure that you have something for these different types of intelligences. That's what the implementation of multiple intelligence means. The other thing I want to talk about, which I already covered some part of it, is the word scaffolding. And we use this when you paint a building, you have to have a scaffolding or repair it. But in education, that simply means what? That you have to provide some kind of extensive instructional support when the concept and the skills that you present for the first time are kind of abstract, difficult. So at the beginning, you try to provide a lot of support. But gradually, once the students, you feel that they can stand by themselves, they don't need the scaffolding. But when they are just beginning to learn the language or beginning to survive in that class, you need to go out of your way to provide that supportive system. And that supportive system is what? Scaffolding. Like what we did in this so far in this class, in this presentation today, that like using TPR is what? Of a way to talk about, because in TPR, when you talk about learning styles here, one of the reasons that TPR, this total physical response, is so successful is because of what? Activating different learning modalities. So in TPR, you see what the teacher is doing, the physical act. You hear what he's saying, and you do what he's doing. So you're basically auditory, kinesthetic, and visual. All these three are what? Activated, and learning becomes very experiential. So it's not a coincidental that what? No, it's not a coincidence that what? TPR is successful. Why is it successful? Because it activates different learning modalities. The visual learners benefit from it, the auditory learners benefit from it, and also the kinesthetic learner benefit from it. So that's scaffolding. That when you use when you activate multiple intelligences, when you use multiple intelligences in your classrooms, then you have already established what? Some kind of a support system. Once they move from the stage of what? The concrete, they can handle abstract, you don't have to have as much support system. So what are the things that in addition to what we said so far, you can do to scaffold or provide a scaffolding? One of the ways to scaffold is what? Using KWL charm. That's a technique for scaffolding. And those of you who don't know what it is, you can use this in teaching science, you can use this in teaching history, you can use this in teaching language, you can use this in teaching social studies, politics, linguistics, whatever. And it's a very, very successful. I have used it all over the world. It has never, ever failed me. And the way it works is this. KWL. K stands for what I know. And W stands for what I want to learn. And L stands for what I learned. Okay? So when you use this one, you could see that when I describe the process, we are not going to do it because of time, and I don't want to bore you to death with all these activities at this late hour. But I'm just going to describe how this could be used. And I'll ask you if you have used it before to give us your experience and idea about this. So this is what I know. So you give the students, every student, you could use this also individually with the students. Let's say you have 30 students, you could make 30 copies of this, give it to them. Or you can put the students in groups. So you could use for intrapersonal and interpersonal what? Activities. So you could use the multiple intelligence as well. So it could be a class, the whole class could work on it. So it's very flexible in that sense. So you give them this, and then you introduce a topic that you intend to teach. You want to teach them this topic. Let's say these days we hear a lot about Syria because of the civil war. Everywhere you go, the newspaper, radio, television, internet, you open it, there is something about Syria. Let's say the topic is Syria. So ask the students in groups or individually, write down everything you know about Syria. When you do that, what does it happen? What happens? You activate what? Prior knowledge. And the fact that this is a way that you honor what students bring to class. There may be students that they were very quiet, and all of a sudden, you bring a topic that they feel so comfortable talking about it. Okay? So you activate that prior knowledge. That's what it is. You create a scaffolding. Their own knowledge becomes what? Their support system. And then what? Ask them after they write that, so you can go from, let's say this is a class, you can break it into 5 different groups. Group 1, Group 2, Group 3. Each group reads that part. What is it that you know about Syria? The fact that each group share their knowledge, a lot of learning takes place. You haven't done anything yet. You haven't given them the passage yet. And then you ask them to what? In the middle column there, write down what you want to know. What you want to know. Sometimes we as teachers, we do what? We impose what we want the students to know. We never ask them what is it that they want to learn about the topic. So here you tell them what? What is it that you want to know? And the chances are that what they want to know, it may not be on that passage you give them. Your passage comes, usually, I've done this many, many times in my life, and I've never had something that what? Will answer all the questions that students had. I always had to go back myself. In the past, I didn't know very much, so I always went there and did all the research myself. Now I have found a way. I tell the students to go and find their own answers and then share it. Okay? So here, you tell them to do what? To write down what is it that they want to know and tell the class about that. So there's a lot of what? Class participation with that. Then give them the passage. It may be 2-3 pages long or to read silently. And then after they read silently, they have to what? Fill this part out. What did they learn? What did they learn? And they present that again. It takes a lot longer than what? Giving a lecture. Giving a lecture is the easiest part. You give a lecture, everything is covered. But did the students learn something from it is another question. With this one, you really make sure that they have learned. And they also learn things that you did not intend them to learn, but that's the real questions. They want to learn that. So this is the middle part, what I want to learn. After they write down what I learned, you bring them back to what? To this part. And say, okay, now, are there questions that you had that this reading did not answer? Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, Group 4, Group 5. Write down their questions. You may find that from every group, there is 1 or 2 questions that what? Were not answered. Then you need to what? Find a way to deliver that information to them. And that's the real thing. They really want to know that. That's the knowledge they want to seek. And that's very important that what? We need to give what students seek. You basically tailor teaching to the students' needs. That's what they need. That's what they want to know. Okay? So they want to know, for example, who was the father of this president of Syria, for example? Or how long has he been in power? Or, okay, this civil war, who is helping the opposition? Why are they helping the opposition? So these are questions you didn't have the answers, but when you bring that information, you ask the students to go and seek the information, bring it to the class the next day, then it becomes a very, really good situation that what? Students have really sought knowledge, and then they have found that knowledge, and they would what? That kind of a knowledge is what kept longer, internalized, because you deliver it to their needs. I'm sure that a lot of people in this class probably, or some people in this class have used that. Anybody has used this KWL in the past in the real classroom and wants to say something about their impression? You moved, it means that you did use it?
I used it for assessment communities.
Oh, great, okay. And how did it work for you? It works great. I have a testimony over here. On this side of the class, anybody use it in a real classroom? Did it work for you? Where did you use it?
I use it in the Mandarin Chinese class.
So you use it in the Mandarin Chinese class. How did it work?
It works good because it's one chart, get together, activating the prior knowledge, setting students' goal, objective, and it's a good assessment of their learning. So it's a chart that you can use through the whole class.
Exactly. That's another good thing is what? That you basically facilitate learning. So there are different definitions for who a teacher is, or what learning is. A teacher is somebody who what? Facilitates acquisition. So we as teachers are what? Facilitators of knowledge. Make learning easier. So when you use KWL, you basically act like a facilitator, not a lecturer, like what we have in most universities. So you just facilitate, because students do all of the work. They write this down. They write their own questions. And they write down and they read, and then they write what? What they learn, and what they want to learn. This is the best example of what? Student-centered learning. You just really deliver it to the students' needs and wants. Anybody else has used KWL? that could share? Please. Where have you used it and how did it work for you?
It always works.
It always works. Okay.
I use it in many ESL classes for students of all ages, from kindergarten all the way through.
Never fails you, even if you're an intrapersonal learner, okay, yourself, okay, it does work. Okay, yes, I've also used it all over the world, teaching different languages, different contents, teacher training, linguistics, education, testing. It has always worked. And I also work in the K-12 system for about 6 years. I taught middle school, high school. This was like a lifesaver because it really involves students, especially in the K-12 system, junior high, high school kids. If you go and lecture, they become impatient. You really need to give them something to do. And this really gives them a lot to do. They think, they talk to each other. That's what they want. So they get that, and it's in a very productive way. And they also produce. How many people are K-12 teachers here? Okay, great. This is, it's a life-saving, believe me. It's a lifesaver, and I've used it, and it never, ever will fail you. Yeah, we'll get you copies. I don't know how we can get them copies, but copies of this one. You can email me. I'll give you my email address. I'll send you the format. Colorful copies, yes. Another method that you could use, or another way that you could use to scaffold, to provide this supportive structure, and to help students what? Activate prior knowledge. And one way of, the reason we activate prior knowledge is what? We want to honor what students bring in the class, their knowledge, what they know. That's the first question you ask. What is it that you know about this? So that's honoring. That's respecting what they bring. That's validating what the students bring in the class. This one also works very, very well. But it does require a little bit of work on your side, that you have to do some typing and making questions, while the other one was what? A lot more teachers friendly, because you don't have to do very much other than making, as Guan said, just making copies of that form, take it to the class and smile a lot, it works. This one, you need to do a little bit of work, meaning what? You have to, of course, read the passage and then come up with some statements about that passage that you want students to read. So what you do is this called anticipation guide. Here, you make one column here agree, another column disagree. And then statements about what they want, they will read. And then, before they read the passage, you give them this and ask them to what? Read the statements and mark either agree or disagree. Agree, disagree, agree, disagree, agree, disagree. You may have 10 statements, you may have 9 statements, you may have more. I think if you make it very long, it becomes boring. I think if it's one page, 10 statements, 9 statements, 8 statements, this becomes more handleable. You can handle it better. So go over it. Just again, PowerPoint is the best thing you can do in a class, or use an overhead projector or something to really help students visualize it, see it, and go over it. And then once you go over it and you get students to say whether they agree or disagree with it, then you do what? Then give them the passage. And then go over it again to see what? Whether they agree and disagree after they have read it. If there's something they said, did they disagree before they read it, but then they read the information, they agree with it, you basically change their knowledge. You give them some knowledge to what? To think about, that this, what they knew, that they thought that was right, was wrong. If they agreed with something, and they read the passage and they still keep the same thing, agree, means what? You confirm their knowledge. It makes them feel good. Well, I thought I knew it, now it is confirmed. They will remember that for a long time. One way is what? This is another way of what? Kind of helping students to internalize the new information. It really, really works. Let me give you an example. I will not give you the passage because I don't have copies for you, but I will give you an example. Let's say that you're going to read about these statements, and I'm going to read for you just in case you cannot see it from wherever you are. The first statement is the bamboo is really a tree. Some kinds of bamboo grow 4 feet in one day. The bamboo plant grows best in cold weather. Bamboo is not very strong. Bamboo is used to build bridges. Bamboo shoots are used for food. Bamboo is used like pipes to carry water. Bamboo grows in Asia and Central America. Bamboo is a member of the grass family. You give them this and say, agree, disagree. Okay? Let's do that. How many people think that bamboo, it's actually the name of this passage is what? Under the bamboo tree. It's under the bamboo, it's the name of a song actually. It's a song, Under the Bamboo Tree. Yeah. I will not sing it for you, don't worry. Okay. Under the bamboo tree, although if you do it, you could sing and use a musical instrument. Remember, you also activate what? The musical intelligence. Yeah. Under the bamboo tree. So bamboo is really a tree. How many people agree with this? 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3 people. Some kind of bamboo grew 4 feet on 1 day. How many people agree with that? 4 feet on 1 day? Okay. The bamboo plant grows best in cold weather. No? Bamboo is not very strong. Agree? Bamboo shoots are used for food. How many people agree with that? Okay. And for the rest of that. And then you give them the passage to read about bamboo. 3 pages, 2 pages. And then ask them to do what? After reading, say agree or disagree. If they agreed first time and they agree after they read it, the answer is what? You confirm their knowledge. They really kind of solidifies what they know. And if they agreed first time and they read the passage and the passage disagrees with what they knew, then that really says what? You were wrong, and now this is the real information. It really helps them comprehend, maintain knowledge. It really helps with what? With these, mostly both of these KWL and this works with non-fiction material, okay? When you teach social studies or science, or you can find some creative way to use it for fiction, but it's hard to kind of do that. It works better with what? With non-fiction, because with fiction, you know, it's hard to agree or disagree. Things could be, you know, it's imagination, so that may not work. So anybody in this class has used this type of scaffolding in the class? Mandy, have you used it? Have you used this one in your class? No?
No, I didn't teach reading.
Oh, okay, you didn't teach reading. This is a good method of what? Teaching reading. Okay. Anybody else has used this one in the class? Well, I invite you to use it, and I really highly recommend this one. Nancy, you have not used this one? You have. Okay, how did it work for you? For what subject did you use it?
They do it for reading for 3rd, 4th graders, and it's really, they have a lot of fun with it.
Yes, it's another thing, that making learning fun. The students have fun with it. That's what you want them to have, fun. So this is another very sensitive, culturally sensitive, although we all talk about second language learners and this, different linguistic group, different, culture group, but this will work regardless of linguistic background. It's just good sensitive teaching. Whether you have native speakers of English in your class or non-native speakers of English, if you just use this, it's just good teaching. I believe there are good techniques to teach and use in the class, regardless of what? Linguistic of ethnic mix in your class. So these were the scaffolding that it's just you create a structure, a supporting the structure to help them at the initial stages to kind of deal with the material successfully. And once they become more competent, you slowly and gradually remove that one, scaffolding. Let them stand without the scaffolding and deal with the material. The other thing is the questions that we ask, types of questions. And usually textbooks offer there are 2 types of questions, yes, no questions that you make questions with do, does, and did, and can, and all of that. There's also called TAC question that also comes under that. And the other group of questions are what? The WH questions, those 9 words like, with what, when, where, why, those kind of questions. And then what we call it, echo questions. And echo questions includes these regular echo question, yes, no. And this is not a common label, but this is, we do use it a lot. And when you're teaching English as a second language especially, this is used a lot by native speakers. So it's a good way to what? Kind of expose second language learner to this type of questioning. Because the first 2 are very common, they are used everywhere. Actually, the first class in ASL or the first semester, they teach them how to make questions with do and doesn't. But a lot of time they what? They use the regular echo question or WH echo question. I provided 2 examples, like Jess has green hair, somebody says. So echo, the word echo means like what? It means that just like with music, you have to have some sound first to get the echo. If you don't have a sound, you don't have an echo. So you have to have statement first. From the statement, you echo the question. And so somebody makes a statement that Jess has green hair. I always think about the hair, that's why I said green hair. And then you say, Jess has green hair? So you just make a question from this. It doesn't follow the rules of the yes-no question to make question with do or does or something. But the fact that you say, you could either emphasize the name, Jess has green hair, because you can't believe that Jess can dye her hair green. Or you knew that what? Jess dyes her hair, but you didn't know that she dyes it green. So you could what? Put the emphasis or the echo or the prominence is the other term that they use on what? On the noun, that like hair, green hair. So you need to basically expose students to this type of questioning as well. And then the other type is the WH echo that again, like the yes, no echo or regular echo, you have to have what? A statement first. And from the statement, you make what? The echo question. Like somebody says that Jim broke his hip. Jim broke what? So it's just like, what? Now the answer is what? Hip. So that kind of a question is used a lot in interaction, in daily conversation. But unfortunately, it's absent from ESL curriculum. So we really need to supplement that one. Now, but these are questions. But when you teach reading, when you teach grammar, you deal with this. But a lot of questions are asked what? When they hear something, when they read something in the classroom. That's why you need to look at questions that are not about just what, when, where. That's surface level questions. So there is a linguist, educator, who divided these question types into 6 different levels of comprehension. I said 6 and I showed you 5. 6 levels of comprehension because of the clicker. And he calls it the analysis question, and then synthesis question, evaluation questions, application question, comprehension question, and knowledge questions. So he believes that when you teach a reading passage, like what Mendes said, if you teach reading, for example, if you teach social studies, if you teach history, if you teach psychology, if you teach sociology, if you teach any discipline that deals with what? That you want them to answer questions about what they read. Medicine, for example, anything. Then you need to do not dwell, this is what he says, do not just be happy to ask what, where, when, and why question. These are good questions to ask first to what? To show surface level comprehension. But you need to ask them what? Questions that deal with what? Analysis, with evaluation, with application. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to show you examples of each type. Okay? Like, what is a knowledge level question? What kind of questions they are. For knowledge level, for example, if let's say they read a story, it could be fiction, it could be nonfiction, it could be newspaper article. So you ask them, name all the characters in the story. You want to see whether they have the knowledge of what they read or not. That's a knowledge question. You ask them, for example, when does the story take place? When did the story take place? They need to know that information there, surface level. Where did it take place? So the characters, the place, the setting, all of that is what? Dealing with the knowledge level. With the comprehension, you go a little bit deeper than that. Tell in your own words what the story is about. So here, you don't want them to memorize, but what? Internalize, right? So to say the same thing, what? In different words. That's a good level of what? Competence. If you can say the same thing, not using the author's words, but your own words. How did the main character feel at the beginning of the story? Or explain why the story has the title it has. So there is a title. Why do you think it's a good title for this? If somebody could justify why this is a good title, then that means what? That person has good comprehension, good understanding of the passage. Draw a picture of the main event in the story. For limited English proficient students, this is like when you ask them this question, you know, wow, you're really, really helping them because they may not have what? The linguistic ability to explain what the main idea is, but they can do that what? With a picture. So you're also using what? Activating different intelligences. But again, you're testing what is in there. You're not promoting critical thinking yet. So that's what Dr. Bloom says what? These questions are good beginning, but they shouldn't be just the end. You really need to what? Promote this critical thinking, to make students to become more sensitive to what? To make those connections to what they know and what they read. So you need to take them a level beyond that. And that's what? The application level. They have read something, you ask them, okay, give an example of people who have had the same problem or have done the same kind of things as the person in this story. I'm reading question number 2. So the person has to know the story first. That's the first principle, that they need to know the story. And then they can come up with another situation. So again, here there is no wrong answer. While in the first 2 types of question, the knowledge and comprehension, there is a right answer and there is a wrong answer. With this one, there is no right and wrong answer. They give you a situation, and that's what they think is what? The similar situation. What could you do if you could go to the place where the main character lives? It's an imaginary thing. That's an application question. So if I go there, I will do this. There's no right answer for this. There's no wrong, but it is what asks students to use their imagination. As I mentioned, I taught in middle school a lot, and they give me very hard time. Every time I teach a class, I ask the students, do you teach or have you taught in middle school? And if the answer is yes, I usually give them pencils, and I'm usually nice to them. Because I know that what? It gives you really hard time. After I learned these techniques, like using Bloom's taxonomy in my classes, that I put students in groups to do this, the other 4 level, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation, and put them in groups. Believe me, I did not have discipline problems. Students, because the reason they were acting out and they were giving me a hard time because I was not challenging them enough. So a lot of times students misbehave because they are not challenged in the class. If you challenge them, they basically what? They get involved in what you teach, and they give you less discipline problem. You basically take care of what? By using some of these practices that I recommended, you also take care of a lot of what? Classroom management issues, discipline problems. So this is one of them, that they just come in what? With ideas of how, if you go to that place, what is it that you want to do? They come up with strange, funny ideas, and you want them to share with the rest of the class. Another level of comprehension is analysis questions. You ask them to do what? To analyze, like tell what things happen in the story that could not have happened in real life. So they need to know the story, and then they need to know this, what are the things. So again, there is no wrong answer. Organize the story into parts and think of a good title for each part. The story has 1 title. Let's break it into 4 parts. Give each part a title. They need to know the main idea of every paragraph to come up with a title. That's keeping them busy. List at least 5 compound words from the story. Again, you let them there. You want to find out what compound words are, and then they figure it out and come up with the answers. And then synthesis questions. These are questions that you really want them to show what? An overall comprehension of the passage. And so you ask them, make a poster or a puppet or a painting, etc., of the main character of the story. That's another thing that you want them to what? Express themselves visually. Use other modes of what? Expressions. Write another ending to the story that's different from what the author wrote. That shows good synthesis. They need to have a complete control of the story in order to be able to come up with this. Evaluation questions. Compare two characters in the story. Tell which one is better and why. Which character in the story would you most likely or like to spend a day with? And the students love to talk about this. They read the number of different characters and say, tell me which character you want to spend a day with and why. Wow, these kids, they really fall for different characters, and this shows you what is it that they like, what is it they don't like. They get very, and again, there is no right answer, there is no wrong answer. It's a way to what? Get students involved, but they need to show the comprehension. If you had the opportunity to go to the place where the story took place, would you go? Why or why not? Okay. If it's about Syria, tell them not to. Okay, yeah, not safe. So that is what Bloom's taxonomy, using that one, is also a way to what? Scaffold, actually. Because you really help them what? You honor what they bring to class. You help them get involved with one another. There is what? Because the way that it's recommended by Dr. Bloom, you use the first level, comprehension, and the second level, knowledge, for the whole class. The other 4 levels of comprehension, analysis, application, synthesis, and evaluation, should be done in what? Group work. So you divide the class from that passage, from each type, you give them questions, they deal with it, they come in front of the class and present that one. Okay? So it also entails what? Different learning modalities and activates different learning styles. Another thing that I would like to add to this presentation is making learning experiential. Other than the TPR, and other than these other tips that I give you, the other thing you can do to make learning experiential, there is a list of recommendations, and one of them is what? To use cooperative learning activities in your classes. So, and again, because you want to help what? Students develop social skills. And the way that I shared some demographics with you. What I didn't share, demographics of how many children, for example, are raised in a single-parent families. Or how many children are born out of wedlock, for example. And how many of those join our public schools. And what does it mean to us when it comes to teaching and learning? In our neighboring city here in Oakland, 75% of newborn children are what? Out of wedlock. And that means what? They're raised by a single parent. And if it's a single parent, that single parent is busy with what? With bringing food on the table. That means what? The child is left, goes to school, if it's at that age, comes home and what? Watches TV, and there's no interaction. And when the mother or the father, whoever the single parent is, comes home after working 8, 9, 10 hours a day, doesn't have time to do what? To sit down and talk to the child. It's a one-way communication watching TV. So there is this social structure that requires what? This cooperative learning. And we need to kind of what? Some of these practices are designed to make up for what? These deficits that we have in our social structure. So this helps with that because you bring students together. They interact with one another. They work together. They solve problems together. Also, when you give a problem to a group of people to work on it, to solve it, you basically respect the fact that what? You are the knower, not the learner. Means you expect them to know the answer for this. So psychologically, they believe that what? The teacher is thinking of me of someone who can solve a problem. So that's why Dr. Kagan, who came up with these principles, he believed that by using principles of cooperative learning, you basically consider the students as knowers rather than what? Learners. And that kind of idea helps students think highly of themselves and work together and solve problems. And so I will not be able to cover all of this PowerPoint on details with cooperative learning. I will just basically, the main parts of it, that when you put students work together, you basically help them to achieve a common goal. And then you create a climate of what? Sharing and caring, okay? And that's another important principle of cooperative learning. And when you do that, you basically foster commitment to the task. And you are encouraging students to work cooperatively as problem solvers, okay? A lot of times students create problems, right? In the K-12 system, not at university level, so don't worry. But at the K-12 system, at least my experience teaching middle school, a lot of time, you just go there and try not to have problems, and sometimes they do create problems. But when you put them in cooperative learning groups, they solve problems instead of creating problems. So as I mentioned before, you consider them a knower rather just a learner. When it comes to second language acquisition, it also has a lot of benefits for second language acquisition. But I should tell you that not all educators agree with the benefits of cooperative learning with second language learners because of different levels of proficiency and accents and all of that. But it does help that I have my classes in the College of Alameda are extremely large. Yi Guan is doing her doctoral research there, and she has seen that I have 45, 50, 57 students in one class. And if I just talk like this and all of them listen, their life is going to be shortened. Because you're doing this only one day, they have to do it every day. So, and if they want to learn to talk, in 50 minutes, how many chances they will have to do the talking if there are 57 people? Less than a minute, if I could find each person to talk. So one way you could do is what? To use some cooperative learning, pair work, group work. So that what? That if you use, let's say, you put 3 people to work together on a task and talk or pair work, all of them talk simultaneously. They don't have to wait for me to call on them. So that's the benefit. That's what this one says, maximizing language output. And Dr. Kagan always compares traditional classroom situations with that of what? This cooperative learning. He believes that in traditional classroom, the learning or output is usually sequential, that the teacher calls on people sequentially, you. But in cooperative learning, everybody talks at the same time. If you have 4 or 5 groups in this class, all 4 of them talk simultaneously, so there's a lot of language output and learning takes place. And also, when people talk in groups, they don't talk to get attention of the teacher. They really talk for a real cooperative and communicative task. They really want to express something. They also learn what? To take turn, to contribute to conversation. They learn the rules of conversation, okay? When to ask questions, when to take turn, when to terminate conversation. All of this can happen with what? With this experience of talking. And so they see what? Supportive system there, that they're not afraid to talk. When you put the students on the spot in a classroom like this, that person becomes kind of what? Gets everybody's attention. It's kind of, if it is, you're going to talk in a second or third language, you don't feel comfortable. You're afraid of what? Pronunciation error, grammar error, vocabulary choice error. So you feel uncomfortable to talk. So in cooperative learning, they sit in small groups. They're not afraid. That's why he says what? That there is willingness without fear. So there is no fear in cooperative groups. So again, this is another culturally sensitive way of teaching and providing help for the learners. I think I didn't cover one of the other. Okay, peer pulling. In this case, the teacher doesn't have to call on each person. The students call on each other. And then language learning and Gambit development, that simply means what? This thing that I mentioned, that they develop social skills. Taking turns, for example. Asking questions. Interrupting, for example. Asking not to be interrupted, for example. All of these could be what? Part of social skills that can only happen if interaction takes place. And that's not just for second language learners. That's for all students. As I mentioned, because of this deficits in our communities, because of lack of what? Interaction between parents and their kids. And also the other thing is what? The social structure in the past, families were bigger. There were several siblings in a family, like there were many brothers and sisters, 3, 4, 5. Now we have what? 1 or 2. And usually people want to keep a distance between number 1 and number 2 because of whatever reasons they have. So, and that means what? Lack of interaction. There are not enough people in the house to talk. So you have to find a place for them, and that's what? Classroom. Other things that is important, those of you that have not used cooperative learning, is that you try to create heterogeneous groups. Do not put all students that are, for example, female in one group, all male in the other group, or do not put all, for example, students who speak one language in one group, and then try to mix them from every viewpoint. Mix them linguistically, they should be mixed, ethnically, gender-wise, ability-wise. Don't put all very able students in one group and all very,